All right, another short reviews. I think a lot of these are not really worth digging into in terms of just talking about them because maybe I didn't give a lot of the albums a ton of attention, or nothing really stuck out to me that I really need to sit down and recommend in person. But there were a few records on here that I think would either appeal to a broad audience or might just are just kind of cool. It's just I didn't really want to spend time doing the full review. And I think a great example of that is Dark Thrones. I don't even know what is it, like their 18th, 20th, whatever it is. It's their latest album. And the reason I didn't give this one a ton of time and consideration is because I feel like looking right at it, they're telling you exactly how much time you need to spend thinking about Astral Fortress, right? Uh, Maybe this is a profound album art for you, but I think it's hilarious, and it's a good heavy metal album from folks who are just having fun making, writing simple heavy metal songs in a sort of evil, blackened heavy metal, mindset. They're very good at it. They've been doing it for several records. This one cuts some of the doom metal influences out and just goes for more of the heavy metal lean. I hear a lot of these riffs as sort of late 70s, early 80s influence stuff. Like you definitely hear a lot of 70s and Sirith Ungol, and you hear a little bit of Sirith Ungol in some of these songs. So that's as deep of a thought as you need to get with it. If you don't know what Darkthrone sounds like or has sounded like for the last several albums, this is a pretty easy pickup. It's not the one I'd recommend, but it's still very good. And I sort of think of it like, what would Celtic Frost have done if they just didn't start to completely suck, you know, after the first album. So yeah, I think it's worth checking out. I think it's good. I think the last one was better, and then the one before that was way better. So up to you where you fall with that. I think for me, this is like it's a heavy metal record from Dark Throne, and I was into it. I had a good time with it. Um, So Puke Wraith is a death metal project from Brendan Dean, who is a Toronto-based death metal musician who is also he's been active in progressive death metal and progressive metal uh, spheres for at least 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. And this is his solo project. It's a sort of, I would call it like a bedroom death metal project, which is not to say that it's like a gore grind album from early 2000s kind of thing, but it's old school death metal made with programmed drums and uh, the rest of it sounding pretty professional. So I didn't find that the programmed drums stood out so much, but it is sort of a fair warning if those offend you, because a lot of people that's the standard they won't touch. Obviously, I put out records that have programmed drums, so I don't care that much. Um, So, otherwise, I think there's a lot of things that I like about death metal in here. I think that there's a lot of force, brutality, and momentum in all the movement on the album. I think there's a good sort of Carcass-esque twist to it. A similar thing that I could say about like Intestinal Hex, sort of his Gut Void bandmates' own solo project, where there's this element of sort of the filthier side of pre-technical death metal from Europe and whatnot. So there's a lot of cool riffs on here. I mean, it's kind of a quick riff album, and nothing to like pour over and analyze. It's just you sit back and enjoy it, and if the drums don't bother you, pick it up. So I was into it. Probably one of the better things that I include on the list this week, I think. Um, yeah. So Tiwanaku. So if you're as obsessed with Nocturnus as I am, and you always wanted to know what everyone did with that band over the years, you probably saw the name Tiwanaku next to Leishlaw on Emu Ed Mowry's. They used to call him Emo Mowry, uh, sort of a Metal Archives page. As his discography included a couple of things that he started doing after Nocturnus split up. He was So he was, well, I won't give you the full history of the guy, but Nocturnus put out, uh, what was it, 2000, 1999 album called Ethereal Tomb. A lot of people hated it. I thought it was awesome. I know, I'm that guy that likes the weird fucking album from nowhere. But this band has been in the works with a former Asheron member since 2003. And they finally got it, oh, 2002. They finally got it going, but unfortunately, Mike Estes passed away, I think, in 2019. And they've just been able to finish it and put it out. And it's a good album. In fact, it picks up almost somewhere between what Nocturnus were doing on Thresholds and what they definitely were doing on Ethereal Tomb. So if you liked that record, you will like this record. It's a little bit more conscious of what symphonic metal has done since Thresholds, but it has shredding. I think at least one song has Alex Webster on bass, and so it's really hard to look at this album and approach it and not think about Nocturnus AD and After Death and all that that band kind of did in the interim. So this left me with that feeling of, well, what I understand life is goes how it does, but what took so long with this record? And was it worth 20 years? Yeah, as if I'm enough of a fan of Nocturnus that it is, and anything related that is in that style, I'm pretty excited about listening to. And this one has kind of a cool theme to it, and I'll leave that for you to discover. The lyrics are pretty cool, and it seems like they're coming from the right place with this one. They're not trying to force an old legacy. They just want to make something cool, and this is a cool record to sit with. I pretty much say as much in the review. So, um, yeah, I had a lot of records that were just kind of in a similar style, or death metal that's a little bit sci-fi with keyboards and whatnot, and I just didn't want to cover them all in long form review. So Suborbital was lower on the list. It's a German death metal band with members of bands you might know. You might know Nightingales if you're really into sort of the melodic death metal side of things. Gloryful is like a power metal band and whatnot. But this group, they're really aiming for early Pestilence, Nocturnus, sort of, not really. A little bit of the early Nocturnus, the first record on there, and so their way of implementing these ideas is more modern than that would suggest. So you'd get a little bit of like an early Mithras sort of overly excited drumming, which I like quite a bit. I'm a huge fan of Mithras, but the songs aren't really there yet. I think this band needed an EP or like a demo phase to sort of pick and choose what was important and what wasn't, because a lot of this record just kind of fills space, and some of it's really exciting. I think Sands of Ernest, a few of these other songs like Gyroscope are pretty exciting, like cool songs. They've got real like interesting rhythmic sort of ideas that you just really don't hear outside of old groove metal or more adventurous progressive metal, death metal from the 90s. So there's a lot of really cool inspiration going into this thing, but I mean, I have to say that the album art is just fine, but they've got this sort of CG moon or planet up there front, and this one just sort of it's. I always think in terms of record stores. If I saw this in a record store, man, I would not pick it up. It's just I know that's kind of just beatier from the look of it, and maybe I'll get there eventually, but this wasn't really. It didn't make a good first impression on me. The music is good; it gets there, but there's only really three or four songs in here that were just really there for you know that stuck with me. I still think that Sands of Uranus is just a really memorable song. Like you should check out that song if nothing else, because I just like the cadence of it and the riff is cool. Um, I'm not going to really go into 96 Bitter Beings. If you were a fan of CKY 20 years ago, They, he's the main guy who's been able to pick up that sound again. I don't think that interests most people who read my stuff, but it's nostalgia for me, and I thought it was worth talking about because I did listen to it quite a few times, and I liked the first half of the album. So, um, so Dissolution. Well, there's another band from the early to mid 2000s that sort of disappeared out of my mind for 20 years and came back with way better than they were before. Um, Disillusion, the first album was kind of all over the place. This was like that early Opeth era, like kind of everyone was trying to do progressive death metal in a sort of melodic sort of way, and it was really working for some, and it was really trash for others. Th this was sort of there. The first album was. The second one was way ahead of its time. I love that second album when it came out, but it was hard to find anyone who was even remotely interested in what the hell that was. It was avant-garde, not really death metal, and it was just cool. And so they came back, you know, years later with a Patreon campaign, and now I think they put out two full-length song Patreon campaigns since, um, and it's really worked out well for them. It is accessible progressive metal. They're not really a death metal group anymore, but there are elements of heavier groove metal, melodic death metal, progressive metal. You know, there's a lot going in there. Um, a lot of it is this is certainly a melodramatic record. It is a confrontational record in terms of the lyrics, and it really is a response to the state of the world. It seems to have been very clear with what had sort of inspired it to come about. I thought it was captivating, interesting, the way a progressive metal should be, album should be. But there were a couple of moments where it's like, yeah, all right, there's a Meshuggah solo, or there's another thing I don't like, you know, here and there, and I definitely enjoy the legacy of this band, but I'm just one of those people who is just always going to be stuck on that one album that was, I felt like it was ahead of its time, back in 2006. Gloria is the name of the album. And I would rather send people to listen to Gloria and appreciate how cool that was for its time than I would send you know someone right to a record like I Am, where it you probably need to have that taste instilled. And yeah, um, Manwick is a noise rock band. If you like Child Bite or the Jesus Lizard is like for me it's a running joke where it's like anything that's noise rock and a little bit wild sounds like the Jesus Lizard. That's an inside joke on my part. There you go. And Bitskar Sudan is not really my thing. It's not really something that I would normally talk about, but it has a Dungeons and Dragons module that comes with the vinyl. I thought that was cool. It seems really well designed, and the art is really great for it. Otherwise, this is what I would call a soft psychedelic rock album, very much in sort of modern meets early 70s thing. But, you know, it's not exactly Uriah Heep or whatever, not exactly Hawkwind either. So it's okay. Not really a review on my part, but, you know, it was worth mentioning for the module. And I think this is just a really striking strange band. You know, it's not a Swedish band, it's a Los Angeles based band with a Swedish name. So take it as you will, you know, go figure out if that's your thing. Um, Otherwise, I definitely had more things I could have talked about and included here. 8 is usually a good cutoff point. So uh, at some point, I'll have a larger list of things. There will be other features this month that will cover more early November releases. So there you go.